Hey, welcome back. So Moonshot AI has recently released Kimi-K2 thinking model, which they're claiming is one of the best open weight thinking models out there. And it's particularly good at tool calling and tool orchestration. In fact, they're saying in their testing, they've done tool calls with something like 200 to 300 sequential calls. Now, if you've dealt with the OpenAI models, for example, there is a hard limit on the number of tools that you can execute. Actually, they only have 128 tools you can put in your registry. So if this can do good tool calling, this is genuinely going to be a game changer. Now, it is also a very capable model as well. It's a 1 trillion parameter model. It is open weight. You can download it, but you're not going to be able to run that on your machine. It does have 32 billion activated parameters, so it's a mixture of expert model. But that means it's going to be fast because therefore you're not hitting everything against the 1 trillion parameters at once. You're dealing against the 32 billion parameters. So today I'm going to test out the agentic capabilities of the Kimi-K2 thinking model. Now I'm going to use the turbo model rather than the main model because I want that extra speed, and that's what I would do in an agentic scenario. So the smaller the model, the better. And we're going to hook it up to my MCP servers in my lab. We're going to see how it deals with things like Telnet, whether it can win a game of Guess Who. I'm going to get it generating some videos for a presentation. I'm going to get it generating PowerPoint decks, and then I'm going to also hook it up to my math server. Now, my math server has something like over 350 tools in its registry. So to get started with Kimi-K2 CLI, you're going to have to download it. To do that, you're just going to do a UV tool install. Now, the other thing you're going to need to do is, if you want to test this out, is you're going to need to create an account with platform.moonshot.ai, and then you're going to be able to mess around with the models, get yourself an API key. Now, once I've got Kimi-CLI up and running, I can just type in Kimi, and then it's going to give me a very familiar sort of interface. And if I do / setup, for example, I can hook it up to the website. That's the Kimi for coding, or I can use the Moonshot AI open platform, and then I just need to put my API key in there. That is what I've already done in this case. So with that, I can now access it. So if I just type something like hi, for example, you can see that's going to come back with the thinking, and then you can see the reasoning in there. It says hi, it's thinking about how it's going to respond, and then it's going to come back and give its final answer. Now, if I want to be a bit more intelligent, it has a bunch of tools built into it. So if I say, what tools do you have? You're going to see it's going to look at Kimi-CLI, and then it's going to say, hey, I've got the ability to spawn tasks. It's got access to bash, it's got glob, grep, etc., write file, and then it's got fetch URL for connecting content. So it's got some built-in capabilities. And again, if you've used something like Claude Code or Gemini CLI, this is going to feel very familiar to you. If I ask it, what is the current weather in London, because it's got access to tools, then it should be able to go off to something like AccuWeather or something, or weather.com, and be able to come back with the answer. Now, you see there, it's using fetch URL, but obviously it's getting blocked there, and then it's moved on to bbc.com, and then it's came back with the weather. So that is example of tool calling in use. But I don't want to use the built-in tools like fetch URL. What I want to be able to do is use my tools, my MCP servers. So the good news is Kimi-CLI supports MCP out of the box. So all I need to do is create a JSON file in standard format like Claude Desktop would accept, and then I can pass through the MCP server that I want it to connect to. So you can see here in this example, all I am going to do here is I'm going to use the standard out-of-the-box SQLite. So I'm going to say MCP server SQLite. My command is going to be UVX, and then I'm going to pass in MCP-server-SQLite, and then I'm going to pass in my path to my testDB, which is running in my local folder. So if I do an ls there, you can see there is the config and there is the testDB. I just need to pass Kimi, the MCP config file, which is SQLite.json. So, and I'm going to pass out using the parameter --mcp-config-file. So now if I run Kimi, it's going to load up that MCP server, connect to its tools. And if I say, tell me the top 10 products in the database, then what it should be able to do is go and look at the MCP server, see what tools are available. So in this case, it's going to try and find out what tables we've got. So it's using list tables. So I'm going to approve that. And then once it's got that, it's going to try and run some commands. You can see there, Kimi-CLI will ask you to approve whatever tool calls. And then eventually, as you can see there, it came back with the list of mini drone, smartwatch, etc. So that is basic MCP. It seems to be doing that very well. Now, as I said, we're going to be a little bit more complicated than that. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to give it access now to my Telnet tool. It's an MCP server that gives access to the model to any Telnet client. Now, I'm going to see if it can connect to telehack.com, and if it can, try and get it to get the cow to say moo. Now, if we just, if you haven't used that before, you can do telnet telehack.com, and then on port 23 you can see I'm connected there, and you see there's a whole bunch of commands there. So you can see there is cow say, and if I say moo, you can see the cow comes back with moo. If I type in something like clock, you can get the current time there. So it's just basic telnet. So all I really want to do here is see if it can follow some basic commands. So I'm going to say connect to telehack and get the cow to say moo. Notice I'm not telling it to use cow say. Notice I'm not telling it what the port is for telehack, for telnet. I'm not even telling it to use telnet. It should figure this all on its own from the tools that it's got access. So you can see the user wants me to connect to telehack, which is like a telnet service, get the cow to say moo. So, and use the cow say command. So it's figured it out for that. I'm going to approve that, and then hopefully it should connect up to telnet using the client. So it's using my telnet client, and it's got it to say move. And then I can say what other commands are available. Maybe try and get the time. So it's done a really good job on that. So let's get a little bit more complicated now. So what we will do is I am going to start up my Guess Who server. So if I go over here and I type in UVX chuck-protocol-server, and then I pass in the command Guess Who server, you can see it's now created a Guess Who server. And more importantly, there's a telnet session on 8023. So if I do a telnet to localhost and we go to port 8023, you can see I'm connected in, and we can play Guess Who. So there's 3 commands: start, help, quit. So we'll say start. And then I can play the game. So I can say something like, is it a man? And then you'll see there it's going to come back with yes it is, and then I can find out what the remaining characters are. If I want to, I can do a guess. So I'll say guess, we'll say it's Sam, and then that's probably there. Sorry, it's incorrect. The character was Philip. So that's the basic game. I want it to win at Guess Who now. So I will restart Kimi. Again, I'm going to use the Telnet client here, and I'm going to say play and win a game of Guess. I've not even said Guess Who. Hosted on the localhost Telnet server on port 8023. So it should be able to connect up and then play the game. So I'm going to approve this, and then hopefully it will play the game, and hopefully it should win. Now, I have done this before with many models, and they all pretty much do badly. GPT, basically GPT-4 onwards, and the GPT-5, the Claude models, etc., they're all great. The latest models, they all do great. But even the earlier Quen models, etc., would struggle with this. So it's only recently that the models have been able to play this game in a decent way. So if this does a good job, then we know that it's been able to make lots of questions back and forward. And this is actually why I'm doing this test, is it's got to make a lot of sequential calls. It needs to remember the session, pass the right session ID in there. It's got to play the game and keep going back and forward, remember what it's asked. So it's going to be doing quite a few tool calls to be able to achieve that in a reasonable fashion. So if we look here, you can see, good, it's asking questions. Is it a man? It's got 19 possibilities. And then it's asking, has it got glasses, etc. Remember the context here. Of course, it has memory about knowing what the Guess Who game is, but it had to telnet in, figure out what the game was, what the command line structure for that over telnet is, and then eventually, play the game and come back with the answer. Of course, a bunch of tool calls. So you can see there, it's won the game. It's saying it's guess max. If I go over here, there we can see what's came back from the logs there. So you see it asked, is it a man? Do they have glasses? Do they have facial hair? Do they have a hat? Are they bald? Do they have black hair? And the secret character was Max. So we know it's not hallucinated an answer. It's done pretty well. And then now it's not closed the session. This is a really good model. This is pretty hard for a model to play this game. It's only really the recent models that are able to do this. I'm super impressed so far. But again, this is a small amount of tools. It's made a decent amount of tool calls, but it's a small amount of tools so far. So we are now going to try something a little bit crazier. I'm going to connect it up to my PowerPoint MCP server. Now my PowerPoint MCP server has a lot of tools. If we look here, you can see it's got 82 tools available to that. I've just brought it up in MCP CLI so that you can see the tool catalog. And the reason it's got 82 tools, it is a Fluent system. So actually what you're going to do is you're going to create a PowerPoint, it's going to add it to the virtual file system, and then you see Fluent-wise, it's going to add lots of different things. So you're going to say add a slide, add a card, reorder the slides, add an image. So lots of different things that it can do. So it's got a lot of choices to make from that tool list to solve the problem. Now, to make this even a little bit crazier, what I want it to do is use some of its built-in tools. So I'm going to say research the best cheeses in France and do a cool presentation with charts with your findings. Make it super cool and great looking. So I'm leaving it open, but what it should be able to do at this point is do a combination of the PowerPoint tools that I've created, but it needs to do some research first. So remember that fetch URL tool that it had at the beginning? What I'm hoping is it's going to use that to then go and look up different cheese articles from things like Wikipedia, etc. So there we go. You can see it's saying it wants me to do some research, etc. It's going to create a sub-agent to research the cheesies, and then it's going to go and plan the presentation. So let's see how that does. This is going to take probably a few minutes to do this. Now, as it's going along here, what you can probably see there is it's doing a few things underneath the hood. So it's only at the research phase at the moment. But you can see it's using that combination of fetch URL to go off to things like Wikipedia, etc., and do its research. Now, it doesn't have access to a search tool like Google or Braver.go, so then that's something that you could probably add in as an MCP server. But what it's actually doing to get around that is just using the curl command from the bash terminal. So again, that's a similar technique that things like Claude Code would use under the hood. And then once it's done its research, you can see there it's writing a file. So it is figured out in advance. It knows it needs to create some charts. So it's actually storing the chart data in a CSV file, and then it's storing its research in a JSON file. So we'll take a little bit look at that later. But so far it's done something like 8 tool calls to go off and do its research so far. And then once it's collated that research, then hopefully it should then go and access my PowerPoint MCP server. Alrighty, so it's done the research element now, and now what it wants to do is go and access my MCP tools. Now, annoyingly, Kimi-CLI always asks for approval. So even if I go approve for this session, there's a lot of tools there, so I am going to be hitting the approve button quite a lot here. Now, as you can see there, as I said, it was very fluent in nature. So you see there is a structure to be able to make this work. You have to call PowerPoint create in the first place, and you need to work out what your theme is. You need to add a title slide. There is a text slide, a metrics dashboard. So, and there's chart, and then you need to maintain what the slide index is. So this is a very, as I said, it's a fluent tool set. It's very orchestrated. And that's why I think it's a useful test for the Kimi model, because it's not enough to just go and call random tools at that point. There is a certain order that you need to follow for this to be able to work well. So we'll see how this kind of looks. Alrighty, so it's finished creating that. And as you can see there, it's not in a 200, 300 tool call sort of mark there, but it's had to use 80 odd tools. And it's ended up using sort of 50 plus tool calls to be able to solve this problem, which I think is fairly decent. And it's a lot of choice that's involved in what you have to do there. So there's all the various tool calls that it's done. Now, if I want to, I can open this up and see what this actually looks like. So there's my best French cheesies presentation. So let's open that up for a second and see what it looks like. So we'll play the slide. So it's done the title slide there. It's done the executive summary. It's kept the theming, etc. This isn't the model's fault, by the way. So what it has done is it's tried to throw 2 charts onto the one. My MCP server isn't sending feedback at the moment to say don't put a chart on top of these things. So the model, it's done actually a decent job there. But if I had given better feedback on the MCP server, this is pretty good. It's created a chart. This is real data. It's went off. It's pulled its data back. That was from that JSON file. And then it's created the chart. Again, this can look visually better in the future when I start applying more design system styles, etc. And then it's created a bar chart. So it's pretty good. Here's some more charts. Some more charts. And again, it's done double bullet points there, but again, I think that's more of my issue. And then it's created a timeline, it's created a pie chart. It's probably not recognized here that it, if it's doing a PowerPoint slide, it should be punchier in there. But again, maybe I could feed that back with the MCP server. I think, and then it's done most produced, most protected. There isn't really a story to this. It's just more of a lot of information. But the fact that it's able to generate a decent slide deck with good research on there, I think it's pretty good, actually. I want to try a more standard tool. This one is Playwright. Playwright allows you to go and launch a browser and etc. So again, we will just use that. So we'll just put playwright.json for a second. And then hopefully with Playwright, I mean, it's got about 30 odd tools. Hopefully it should be able to navigate the website. So the query I'm going to give it is give me a summary of the top 5 AI news articles from either techmeme.com or techcrunch.com. So hopefully it will go and use my MCP server. So yeah, it's using Playwright. It's going to use browser navigate. And there you go. It's gone and used that to have a look at the kind of data there. So if we see what else is happening under the hood there, it's wanting a new browser tab. So I've just approved that. And then it's going to navigate to TechMeme's AI section. Now there is a risk because it does have the fetch URL tool. It may stop using the browser at some point and then switch to the fetch URL tool over using the browser tools there. But I think it's doing a fairly good job there. So it's gone to techmeme.com. It's got the top 5 articles, and now it's giving me an AI summary there. So it's able to interact with browsers fine. It's able to use Playwright, which is a standard tool. Again, I'm not hitting a lot of tool calls in that case, but it's just more of kind of showing that capability. Now, as I said before, I said I was going to get it to generate some video. So I'm going to use my Chuck Motion server, which allows you to generate videos. Again, very similar to the PowerPoint server. So I'm gonna just say research the best cheeses in France and do a cool video with charts with your findings. Maybe add an image. Now, while it's doing its researching, again, just to see the number of tools that are available, we can connect up to that with MCP CLI. Rather than doing PowerPoint, I'm just going to put Motion as the server there. And then if I do tools, similar, you can see this is a big server, right? So you see it's got 96 different tools available, right? So it's very similar to the PowerPoint. It maintains themes and typography, etc. It's got lots of cool effects like typewriter effect, text overlays, title scenes. It's got charts like pie charts, etc. It's got video layouts, so you can do video over video. So I think that's it's quite a lot of tools there, and then it's got to do the various interactions. So this is a little bit spicier for it, but let's see how it does. Okay, so as you can see there, it's already starting to work with my tool there, my Motion server. So it's starting to do things like add title scene, add track, set active track. And this is quite interesting. You can see it's starting to use some of the cool visual effects like add stagger text. So this is going to be interesting. It's going to do a bar chart. So again, it's not just about calling random tools. It's going to have to do a little bit of thinking. It's going to have to maintain a structure and bring that together into an overall story, and then make sure that you're calling the right tool in the right order. And again, with 92 tools, that's quite a lot of tools for it to be able to deal with. Alrighty, so it's actually created it now. Let's see what this looks like. And if we look at what's in there, French cheese presentation was the one that it's done. I'm just going to do an npm install because it's a remotion project, and then I'm going to do an npm start. And then if the demo gods are good with us, then hopefully Kimi will have generated a decent video, but we will find out in a second. Okay, so let's do npm start. Okay, it seems to have rendered a video, so I'm going to hit play. Subscribe for more culinary journeys, so it went with the subscribe piece. France produces over 1,000 varieties of cheese. There's my bar chart. It's got a nice little fade out. French cheeses by type on my little pie chart there. This is interesting. I don't know why it's throwing in a code component there. I mean, that's crazy. I think this is probably one of the things to realize about the Kimi model whilst it's doing that. It's cool as it is, when you give it a lot of tools, it tries to use all of the tools. So really what you need to have to make Kimi work well is you need to be able to put in a planner, and you need to really put in a tool processor, right? So actually just giving it carte blanche makes it really interesting, because it just makes really interesting tool choices, because it will just use tools for the sake of using it. This is actually a really good effect there. You see it's put a little French flag in there, Bon Appetit. It's using the typewriter effect there. I think that's really cool. Yeah, this is a nice thing. I just don't think there's a need for this code section. You would never put that in it anywhere. But that's probably one of the things about the Kimi model there. But again, it's created a visually really good video there with a sort of cohesive story. Alrighty, so the last one I'm going to do is, I said I'm going to run the math server at the moment. Now, this actually won't run against OpenAI. So if I go back into MCP-CLI for a second, let's exit out there for a second. And then rather than running the server as motion, I'm going to run this as math. What you will see there, because I'm connected up to OpenAI, tools-wise, as I said, there's 393 tools. But if I say multiply, if I say use a tool, add 5 to 6, and you're going to see there, invalid tools array too long, expect an array with a maximum length of 128, but got an array with a length 393, so OpenAI won't accept that. Here, let's see what happens. Now I'm going to use a more complicated query. I'm going to do some math stuff. Don't ask me what these things are, but I'm going to say find all primes less than 300 that are sum of two squares. So hopefully the Kimi model should be able to work with my 393 tools. And yeah, it is. And again, it's starting to do this. So it's found the prime count tool, so it's going to use that. And then again, what we're going to start to see here, now this is cool, right? So let me be really clear about this. This is super cool, because that has got over 393 tools, and the Kimi model's just working with it, right? So, and it's picking the right tools across the board. The only thing I would say is, again, you're going to start to see this as I do these demos. It really needs a planner, because it's not very good at planning on its own. And then it's just because the tools are available, it is just randomly using the tools there. So it's came back with the answer, but yeah, it's just something to kind of be aware of. And again, we'll do one more example in this case, just to sort of make a point. So I'm going to say, solve this, the prime pell equation challenge. And then I'll list what it is, and then see what it's going to do on this sense. And then hopefully it will come back with the answer there. So if we look there, it's actually done a fairly decent job. It is selecting the right tools there. You can see it has found the solve Pell equation tool that I made available on the Pell Solutions generator. And then it's calling is prime and all of these things, and it's done it sort of multiple times. And then it's checking is Mersenne prime, for example, and is perfect number. You could make the argument that it probably doesn't need to call all of those tools. Again, it's using all of the tools because it can, as opposed to need to. So I think it would hugely benefit from a planner and a tool processor in that case. But it does come back with an answer. I just think that it's done a fabulous job of the tool calling. But, it's just a little bit crazy in its choice, and it's just a little bit, because it has access to a tool, it will use that. And we've seen that before, as opposed to using exactly the tools that it's needing. And that's where a planner will come in. All in all, though, it's passed really well in the lab there. So if you really look at it, it's access a math server with 390 tools. It's been able to generate a video, maintain a sequence, and that had 90 odd tools, and then it generated something like 50 tool calls. It was able to generate a presentation with something like 50 tool calls as well. It was able to mix together its built-in tools with the MCP tools. It was able to use the browser. It was able to play the Guess Who game and win, and it was able to go off to things like Telehack and use Telnet, etc. So it's a really good model. It's a really good model. So well done to the Moonshot AI team. And again, I think I'm going to spend a lot more time using that. Maybe in a future video, I'll try and bust the amount of tools that it can use. Let's see how far it can actually go. And maybe I'll put it up against with an AI planner and see how it performs. But and this is a really great open model for agentic. So hopefully some of the stuff that's came into this model we'll start to see come into other models across the ecosystem as well. Anyway, hopefully this video has been useful, and I'll catch you on the next one.